Colorado gets ready to sue the Trump administration. Like it or not, this could become a pattern. We meet Coloradans who say they're being punished because other people are abusing opioids. RTD's new autonomous vehicle debuted today and seemed to think a curb was a person. But hey, better safe than sorry. A next viewer is curious about this piece of public art, which looks not safe for work, depending on your angle. And speaking of workplace safety, Steve Steger is broken, but unbeaten. That's next. When someone comes forward to report a sex crime on a college campus in Colorado these days, it starts a process that the Trump administration says is unfair to the accused. If the feds change the way that sexual assaults are investigated on campus, the state of Colorado is likely to sue. Here's our Anusha Roy.
Colorado is in the middle of the federal and state government ping-ponging on what's best for students on campus.
Higher education had its own sort of Me Too movement as Title IX became enforced more and more robustly.
Metro State University is not the only one focusing in on Title IX, a federal guideline which prohibits gender discrimination, including sexual assault on college campuses and K-12 schools.
Survivors, victims of a lack of due process, and campus administrators have all told me that the current approach does a disservice to everyone involved.
For 2 months, the U.S. Department of Education has been taking feedback on possibly narrowing who on campus can take a sexual assault complaint and allowing cross-examination through representation like a lawyer.
For me, it just is wrong.
Those worried about this liken it to universities setting up their own courtrooms, which is where the new Democratic Attorney General said things could end up.
But it's the effects afterwards. People live with that trauma. That's why this matters. And we've worked hard here in Colorado to develop a system that protects survivors. We're also very mindful of the due process rights of the accused.
Those who like the idea say right now, people facing accusations don't have an equal chance to prove they're innocent.
No one benefits from a system that does not have the public's trust.
But Democratic State Senator Faith Winters said she doesn't have faith in the possible changes and is running a bill to establish state rules on how campuses handle these situations.
Wanting to provide some certainty to both women going to college and our institutes of higher education.
To the extent the state law doesn't conflict with federal law but creates an additional requirement, then we'll likely have to both follow the federal requirements and that state law requirement.
All right, so if you are looking to actually weigh in on this, lucky for you, public comment was extended until tomorrow. A couple of technical problems happening earlier this month during the shutdown. People were told you get 60 days to leave your thoughts. So far, Kyle, more than 89,000 people from across the country have done just that.
Attorney General Weiser versus the Trump administration. We've heard this before. We'll hear it again.
Yeah, there's been a whole bunch of topics that he has said that he would sue over: safe use sites, climate change, birth control. Now you can add this to the list as well.
All right, Anusha, thank you very much. So Governor Polis's administration is currently on the clock, trying to decide whether to block Denver teachers from striking. And here's what I've learned has happened today. We know there's a joint conference call. It was the governor, some state labor department leaders, union reps, and the school district leaders. I'm told that on this call, the governor urged both sides they need to be more open and transparent with each other. They shouldn't hold back information that's likely going to come out anyway if they end up in mediation. February 11th is the deadline for the state to decide if it will block that teacher strike. A Republican in the state legislature thinks that Colorado should cut a fat check to Jack Phillips and Masterpiece Cake. Phillips is the baker from Lakewood who was partially vindicated by a Supreme Court ruling that found that the state of Colorado treated him unfairly, though the justices didn't rule whether Phillips was within his rights to refuse to bake a cake for a gay couple. Phillips fought this case for 6 years in the courts, and Republican Representative Dave Williams introduced a bill earlier this month that would make the Colorado Civil Rights Commission, the group fighting Phillips, make them responsible for paying his lost revenue.
Because he wanted to remain loyal to his faith, he was not going to go ahead and violate the tenets of his faith, and so the state of Colorado essentially prohibited him from actually engaging in wedding ceremonies, thus losing 40% of his income.
Williams wanted this money to come from the Colorado Civil Rights Division's budget, and we actually just got word that Democrats have killed this idea in committee a short time ago, so that's the end of that. Colorado is closer to changing the way that we elect a president around here, provided that enough other states eventually also want to move to the popular vote. There's a bill sponsored by Democratic Senator Mike Foote that would basically replace the Electoral College. It's passed the Senate, So if it becomes law, Colorado's 9 electoral college votes would be given to the presidential candidate who gets the most votes nationwide, not just the most votes in our state. Critics say that just enables California, New York, and the like. The bill now heads to the House for consideration. You know that feeling when you're sitting in traffic, got to get someplace, light turns green, but the dude ahead of you does not move, not an inch. Now imagine a new system that would warn that driver that the light was about to turn green. Now stop imagining that, because the legislator who came up with that idea had to kill his own bill. And our Marshall Zellinger explains why.
I know it's been a while since most of us have been in traffic school, but we all know traffic lights go green to yellow to red. But what if they also went the other way?
It would just reverse that, and it would go red to yellow to green.
Republican State Representative Hugh McKean has an idea to warn drivers to get ready to go.
I've been joking with people, maybe it's just an indication for people to put down their cell phones and start driving.
Don't worry, we won't be creating laws to help those already breaking them, because McKean can't do what he wants to do.
I have to kill my own bill. Federal law actually says you're not allowed to put anything between the red light and the green light.
We're not really on board with yellow, sometimes meaning stop and sometimes meaning get ready to go.
Anna Bunce is the traffic manager for Aurora, which is in the process of retiming the lights in the city.
Folks who are operating a lethal weapon should be paying attention.
She showed us the computer brains of a traffic signal. This example of Alameda and Chambers shows us the maximum number of seconds the light can stay green compared to the actual time it did, which could be based on traffic and time of day. By the way, the yellow lights in Aurora last about 3 to 4 seconds.
Even if you're ready to go, you should also always be ready to stop in case someone else enters the intersection when you're not expecting them.
Maybe we could add something to that traffic signal that just gives a few more seconds for the intersection to clear.
So how the heck did a lawmaker get a bill drafted that would violate federal regulations in the first place?
This one was proposed to me by a paramedic up on Highway 85. He proposed this idea to me that he had seen in Northern Europe. So really, we just give those ideas to our staff. In this instance, when we were looking for studies, that's when we found out that the federal government precludes this.
The old blame the staff excuse. McKean's bill to do the impossible will be heard in a committee tomorrow afternoon, where he will promptly ask it to be postponed indefinitely, which means killed, and he'll probably say something about his staff.
About his staff, yeah, throwing the staff under the bus again. That's terrible. We don't do that around here on this program. Thank you, Marshall. We want RTD to get a win, because, I mean, the A-line, rough start. G-line, no start at all. So we are rooting for that little driverless shuttle thing that they debuted today. It is quite literally a small step forward in the way transit works. It'll shuttle people to businesses near the 61st and Pena station starting tomorrow. And our ailing Steve Steger got one of the first rides. Hey.
Yeah, you know, we figured I was already injured. Why not try something new? And if you're worried about safety with something like this, just look at what happened when someone moved on the roadway as we passed by. Like a dude literally stuck his hand out and waved at us, and that thing stopped. So the sensors on this thing are pretty impressive. The company that built this shuttle operates them around the world. They say they've traveled about 200,000 miles without any accidents, but just to be sure things are safe, they're going to have someone on board to make sure it can stop if it needs to. There are buttons all over the place that'll make it stop. For now, the Easy Mile shuttle will only operate between 3 stops around the Panasonic campus near the airport. They will fine-tune the software from there with hopes to expand.
It's constantly scanning the world around it and looking for obstacles. And if it senses an obstacle, it reads how far it is and if it can either slow down safely in order to avoid the obstacle or stop abruptly.
So Easy Mile, the company that built the shuttle, says the sensors are so accurate that the shuttle actually has a better reaction time than any human being could. Now, it is not the first autonomous car on Denver roads. You remember that beer truck that traveled between Fort Collins and the Springs, but this is the first time that that application has been used in transit. So Easy Mile has shuttles operating in other states, moving people around residential communities and office parks, but never public transit quite like this.
This is terrible. Remember that little clear truck that Jeremy Hohola did his interview series in?
Yeah, it felt like we should get one.
It looks like that truck.
We should get one of those.
That's what it looks like.
It was interesting. The one thing, we rolled up to a curb, and since the sensors are so low on the thing, it thought that that was an obstacle in the roadway, so it just stopped.
In front of the curb, yeah.
Where, like the curb, it was supposed to go over the curb. curb.
Oh.
And the guy had to input that go over the curb.
Sure.
So it takes
sure.
a little bit longer than I think people expect it
Sure.
might. But
Override.
They'll get it fixed.
Seemed like a bumpy ride for a man who's nursing a bum elbow. How's your arm?
It's you know what? I'm out of the splint.
And
I can type now. I just have to be careful. But I scored that goal. So
you did score. He scored a hockey goal when he injured himself. Wants everybody to know that. That's pertinent information. Thank you, Steve.
They feel like the forgotten victims of the opioid epidemic, the people who use painkillers responsibly.
They're trying to group us all with the addicts, and it's not fair because it's causing this problem.
As snow piles up across Colorado, parts of northern Colorado are high and dry. We found out why. And an artist says the inspiration behind this public art should be up to your imagination, which is a real problem because this totally looks like a...
Every story we air about the opioid epidemic draws at least one email from at least one of you asking that we don't forget those who responsibly use painkillers, people who imagine life would be excruciating without them. This is that side of the story.
We're trying to let people know because a lot of people don't know this is happening to us.
Chronic pain is not a crime.
And people don't realize that real chronic pain sufferers are getting their medications either completely taken away or forcefully tapered down, and they're having to live in agony, and that's not right.
I was born with flat feet.
I broke my neck and my back, and I have Crohn's disease.
I have degenerate disc disease.
The pain levels are so high. It's 24/7 migraines that don't stop.
And every day there's people talking about how their pain meds were just taken away with no warning.
I was a responsible pain patient for many years, and then one day it was a big fat no-no, and now I'm struggling.
I had some providers that basically straight up told me they were afraid to prescribe that medication.
They took my medication away.
Everybody's concerned about addiction. Nobody wants addicts to have access to pain medicine, but on the flip side, the chronic pain sufferers do need this medicine to have any type of life.
It just takes some of the pain away so you can function and have some quality of life. And that's being taken away from thousands of people.
A lot of pain doctors are throwing in the towel because they're scared of getting prosecuted.
I want people to understand that we're not addicts.
I just would like the sick people to not get treated like criminals.
Stop punishing pain. It will not fix the problem.
Today's local rally, one of many across the country, through the lens of our photojournalist Corky Scholl. I would like to make a recommendation. You know where we point you towards something that didn't come from us, but I think it is worth your time. An ace investigative reporter from the Denver Post, Christopher Osier, has joined the Colorado Sun, and he has come out swinging with a devastating new report on the $231 million that our state spent trying to help young kids learn to read. The program is not working. The numbers, the reading rates are moving in the wrong direction while the tax dollars keep getting poured into the program. You can find a link to the Sun's article on the next Facebook page.
It was a cold start to the morning, but after a lot of sunshine, we warmed up into the upper 20s and low 30s today. We're on the very outside edge of that polar vortex, which, by the way, fun fact, that air is so cold it just doesn't hold a lot of moisture. That's why we're not seeing a lot of snow there, but out ahead of it instead throughout the northeast coast with rain trailing down into the mid-Atlantic states. And they have the coldest air still there yet to come. That'll happen tomorrow and into tomorrow night, where daytime highs will be at 15 below for Chicago, 19 below around Minneapolis, and then getting into tomorrow night, we'll dip to 27 below in Chicago. That makes 29 for a low here in Denver. Look awfully nice. We're going to see a big warm up over the next couple of days. Lows tonight still chilly, dropping to 13. 8 Greeley, 11 for Fort Collins. But check this out. 47 degrees are high on Wednesday, 53 Thursday, 50s all the way through the weekend. It does get windy on Sunday, and we'll get some mountain snow. Hopefully this is enough to melt off all that snow that's still sitting on the ground.
Denver's seen more snow in the last couple of weeks than all winter. A next viewer wants to know, why no love for northern Colorado? There's science behind it. And a city that appears to be having a hard time following its own rules. Next.
It is one of Denver's most prominent pieces of public art, standing right next to I-25 by the Highland Arch Bridge for more than a decade now. But we still get the question here, what is that thing? Most recently from a next viewer named Paul. Well, Paul, the sculpture is officially called National Velvet. The artist says it is not supposed to look like anything, that it's just up for interpretation. So we'll blame interpretation for the fact that I have heard people for years call it Venus.
Our next question today comes from Catherine. She asks, can you please explain the reason Loveland and Fort Collins are not getting the snow this year when y'all do? Catherine, our meteorologist Kylie Bierce has you covered.
It does feel like a bubble. Denver's been getting lots of snow over the last couple of weeks, while the Fort Collins Loveland area has been getting mist. The reason all has to do with a slight shift in wind, northeast versus northwest. Northeasterly wind leads to upslope. When the air goes up a mountain, we get more moisture, more snow. Northwesterly wind leads to downslope, so it's the opposite. Air goes down a mountain and dries, so no snow. The pattern over the last couple of weeks, we've had storms dropping in from the north. As the wind comes from the north, it hits southeastern Wyoming, and there's a little area there of higher elevation called the Cheyenne Ridge. So as it wraps around that ridge, it hits the Fort Collins area with a slight northwesterly wind, so dry air, no snow, but it hits the Denver area with that northeasterly wind, upslope, and a lot of snow. Now, this isn't necessarily unusual. It's just the fact that it's happened several times in the last couple of weeks that it feels like northern Colorado's in this bubble of getting no snow. So what will break up this pattern? Instead of storms coming in from the north, we need them to originate over the Four Corners region. That'll bring easterly flow to the entire Front Range, bringing more moisture to northern Colorado. Here's the good news. We tend to see more of these storms in an El Nino year. That's this year. So hopefully we'll see more moisture as we head into spring.
There were contractors out at the state capitol today. They were assessing the damage done by a vandal to several statues and the marble floor over the weekend. Still no arrest of that suspect seen on video cameras, and no estimate yet on the dollar amount of damage done. The three men whose busts were busted all made significant contributions to our state's history, so this gives us a chance to talk about them again and their work. You've got Richard Castro. He was a leading voice in the immigration debates of a past generation, a social worker who later led Denver's Civil Rights Agency, elected to the state legislature at the young age of 25. There's Peter Dominic. He served with distinction in World War II, came home to serve in Congress. I apologize for the fact that my photo is up there. He's clearly the gentleman in the middle. He came home to serve in Congress. He led a brand of Republican politicians that wanted Western states left alone. And John Vanderhoof became governor when Gov. Love joined the Nixon administration, served decades in the state legislature. Poor guy, though, he's best known for taking a $5 million moon rock home with him when he left the office. He insisted it was a mistake, like the mistake of putting my photos up there for some reason. We have spotted a sign to defeat all other signs. And a next viewer has a request that I will be beyond delighted to fulfill for you. Next. It's a sign that the city of Littleton is sick of your signs. Some next viewers, Molly and Dan, noticed these posted on light poles around the city. You've seen these. One sign that says it doesn't want any other signs hanging out with it, and violators will be prosecuted. One sign to rule them all. Email us the signs you see to next@9news.com or tweet them with the hashtag HeyNext. Mike McNevin writes in tonight about Steve Stager's arm injury, which Steve insists was incurred while scoring a game-winning hockey goal. Mike asks, any video of the winning goal? Why, yes, Mike, it's funny you ask, because there is video. It's spectacular, and we will play it tomorrow. Jennifer says, Kyle, you're better than a boring white shirt. I'm actually not, Jennifer. We've covered this. I am only interesting on the outside, not on the inside. And Russell Poulin says, since Longmont won't get light rail until 2042, can RTD get us some of those driverless shuttles out here? Ooh, the shade, it burns. We will see you next time with that video. Subscribe to the Next YouTube channel for the best of Next and some other stuff.